Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to show you 10 different ways to do your beaded edge, all using the same basic technique. Start by threading your needle and knotting one end. The first technique is a one bead loop, shown here on those earrings. I am using a scrap piece of felt to practice on. Start by just going up through your felt close to your edge, like so. I'm going to be demonstrating with size 10 beads, so they're a little bit larger. This works with any size beads. To start, we need to use one extra bead. Since we're doing a one bead loop, we're going to use 2 beads. Then I'm just measuring by placing those beads next to my first stitch to determine where my second stitch should be. I'm going to go for the middle of the second bead, approximately. Don't worry about this too much, it's just our first stitch. Once you've pulled your thread tight, you're just going to put your needle up through the second bead, creating the loop. And as you pull it, you'll see they sit next to each other, like so. They're not going to look perfect because it's only the beginning. For the rest of the edge, we'll grab one bead at a time, and then we're going to go close to that last bead, like so. Put your needle through, pull it tight, and then go up through that second bead. You'll get a hang of the spacing really quickly. And this is going to be our foundation for everything else we learn throughout this tutorial. So practice this one a few extra times until you think you've got a good hang on it. Our second variation is the 2 bead loop that looks like this. This is my favorite classic way to edge all of my projects. Since we've already started our line here, we're just going to use 2 beads. If you're starting from the beginning, we always want to use an extra bead, so you would use 3. So now, again, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to give myself a little bit more space than I do on my single bead stitches, like so. And then we're only going to go up through the second bead and pull it tight. And what you'll see is it creates this kind of like this little lace edge or a picot edge. Again, this technique is super simple, so give it a couple practice rounds. You want to make sure that your stitches are tight enough together that it isn't sitting flat, that middle bead isn't falling or moving, and also not too tight that you can't see the small gap between the base beads. This takes a little practice, but it's super easy and I'm sure you'll get a hang of it right away. Our third variation is the exact same, just alternating colors to create a cool edge like this one. So you see here I have my blue bead and my gold bead. Now the gold bead goes on first if we want it to be the upper bead. You'll see the way I'm holding my needle here is going to show what it looks like once we've stitched it down. So this technique is going to be the exact same. You won't really need to practice, but you can always do a few stitches to see how it looks and what you think of it. For our fourth technique, we're going to mix some different sized beads into this. So here's a couple of examples of ones I've done, switching colors and switching the size of beads. So you can see here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put our big bead on first and then our seed bead on second to make it the larger center bead. Now this one, it's really important that you measure. This is going to take a little more practice to get a hang of. I like to push the beads down to the base of the thread and use my needle to push them tight, like so, holding my thread with my other thumb against my project. Now, once I've got it all set where I think it's going to go, I'm going to go a little bit closer and go through the 2 layers and then go through our seed bead. Pull your stitches nice and tight and you'll see that it creates a really cool effect. I also like to use this in conjunction with the 2 bead loop with just seed beads or with alternating color beads to make it an interesting edge and give me a little bit of allowance to make sure that the entire edge fits around my project properly and I'm not getting to the end and not being able to fit one of these large beads between the beginning and the end. And our fifth technique is to just add more beads. To create this lacy edge, I'm going to go ahead and go with 3 beads this time. And then I'm going to measure out the space by putting the beads down to the base, and this one will be a little bit further than our last edge with the 2 beads. And then just go up through the last bead, just like we do every other time. And you'll see this creates a more flourishy, kind of lacy edge. So you can keep doing this with any amount of beads. Let's try this again with 3 beads. And then we're going to alternate and do 1 bead before trying another amount. Like we did with the larger beads, you can totally switch it up. You can do 3, then 1, you can do 4, then 2. You can do any combination of these amounts to make a intricate and exciting kind of edge design. So now we're going to do 4 beads to show you what that looks like in comparison. Feel free to play around and do your own patterns to practice different alternating kind of patterns to see what you like best. Another thing you can play with is instead of just going up through that last bead, going up the last 2 or 3 beads to create a higher stacked effect. This time I'm going to do a 6 bead loop, and then I'm going to kind of squish them closer together like this and then tack through. And this time I'm going to go up through the 3 beads at the end. And you'll see it creates a really kind of pronounced edge like so. Check that out. And with this we can try another technique of then adding 3 more beads and creating a large stacked edge. Go through, and then we're going to go up through all of the beads. This is similar to doing ladder stitch on a pair of hoop earrings. It's the exact same idea, except using our felt as the hoop and doing our loop through that. Similar to a ladder stitch hoop, we can also alternate the number of beads to create kind of a triangle pattern. So you can see here now, I'm using the ladder to then go down and create kind of a zigzag around our edge. So you can totally play with this, do as many things as you want. And here are our first handful of techniques and what they look like. Our last 2 techniques build off of the 1 bead loop. I'm going to show you how I added the fringe to these earrings to create the tiers. So same thing, we're going to go through our felt, and then we're going to do 2 beads to get started. We're going to use a 1 bead loop as our base for this. So go ahead and do at least 5 or 6 1 bead loops to give us our base to work with. Once we've created a sufficient base, we're going to do our fringe. So I'm going to grab a bunch of beads on my needle, and then I'm just going to count them. I'm going to start with 10 because that's kind of a nice little mini fringe length to do, and take off the excess beads. Now again, this is just like making fringe earrings, but this time we are using a base that is attached to a flat beadwork piece. So you're going to take the stopper bead, push it down, and then take your needle and go through up all these beads, and then carefully go through the bead at the base near the felt. It's important not to go through the felt because it's going to make it difficult for you to pull the thread tight. So you can see here I went through it a little bit, and just correct and make sure that you are just going through the bead. Then pull it tight and you'll have your first little fringe done. You can also grab that stopper bead, hold it, pull your thread to make sure you've got your thread pulled nice and tight and it's not extra drooping or has any gaps. Now to do our next fringe, we're going to go down through the next base bead and add on some more fringe. So for this, I'm going to do a alternating lengths, so I'm going to put on 15 for this next one. And here is our second fringe, all ready to go. And then again, we're going to go carefully up through that base bead. This technique is super easy, and it's a great way to add some flourish to your beadwork to make it extra stunning. And here's what our nice little fringe looks like. The next technique is how I do the eyelashes on these same earrings using bugle beads. So same thing, get a base ready and get at least 6 beads on there. And then you're going to grab 1 bugle bead and 1 seed bead. Drop them down to the base row, and then we're going to use our seed bead as a stopper again, and we're only going to put our needle up through the bugle bead and then our base bead. Make sure to pull your thread nice and tight to make sure that the bugle stands up and isn't flopping or falling over. Now you could work just like our fringe and go up through the next bead if you want to create a very dense bugle edge. For these earrings, I like to skip a bead. So what I'm going to do is then go up this bead and then down the next bead. So I am skipping 1 bead over. And now I'm going to go through our felt or our base and come back up through that bead. This will make it extra secure, but it's totally optional. You could also just skip across. Now one more time, we're going to grab a bugle and a seed bead, put them down to the base, and then go through our bugle bead. Pull it nice and snug, and then we'll go on to our next one. So for this one, I'm just going to skip to the next bead. This is still plenty secure, but if you want to have that extra security, you can do it like we did the last time. And ta-da, here is our bugle edge. This technique, you can get really creative and use it in so many different ways. So here you are. Here are the 10 techniques we practiced, all using the exact same looping method, just using different beads, different colors, and different amounts. I hope you like this video. Please give it a thumbs up, comment any questions you have, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.